What you doing here, man?
New developments after a former Wolf City police officer was found not guilty of killing a man outside a gas station 2 years ago. Now we're seeing the body camera video of what happened, and we should warn you, the video might be hard to watch. Matt Howerton breaks it down and has reaction.
Reports of a fight at this Wolf City gas station is how the police shooting death of Jonathan Price, seen here in a green shirt, began. This is Officer Sean Lucas's body camera footage. A jury found him not guilty of Price's murder last week. This video of him shooting the 31-year-old hasn't been seen outside a courtroom by the public until now.
I'm sorry about the broken glass right here.
Lucas suspected Price was involved in the fight.
I can't be detained right now.
He tries to detain him, but Price starts to walk away. He is also unarmed.
Put your hands behind your back now.
Lucas pulls his taser and deploys it while Price's back is turned. He struggles. And when Lucas tells Price to get on the ground, he slowly moves toward him. Still affected by the taser, he reaches his right hand up towards Lucas.
Get on the ground! Get on the ground!
That's when Price is shot 4 times. In court, Lucas's attorneys argued Price was trying to grab the taser. They still stand by that Tuesday night, saying the body-worn camera footage shows Sean give 20 loud, clear commands while exhausting all reasonable force options to gain compliance. Tragically, when Mr. Price grabbed his taser, he had no other options. The jury reviewed and analyzed the same video when they acquitted Sean.
Unfortunately, the result that we saw from that jury simply doesn't match what we see in this video.
But Lee Merritt, the attorney for Price's family, who is now suing Wolf City and Lucas civilly, disagrees, saying Price was only extending his hand. This video was also used by Texas Rangers to file the murder charge used to fire Lucas. Merritt says they got it right. The jury got it wrong. That jury also didn't have a single resident of Wolf City on it, Merritt says, or anyone who was black.
Race played a factor in the jury's decision to acquit Sean Lucas. Hunt County is a lot more diverse than what was reflected in the all-white jury.
We're standing.
Merritt now asking the Department of Justice to review the case to determine if any federal charges should be brought against Lucas, also to review how the case played out in court. That includes jury selection.
We're asking them to look at the case from gavel to gavel and see whether or not there was discrimination present in this process and getting justice for the Price family.
In Hunt County, I'm Matt Howerton.
We want to thank you for tuning in to You and the Law podcast show. We got a special guest tonight on our podcast show, Pastor Jesse Jackson of Oklahoma City with East 6th Street Christian Church. So, Pastor Jackson, glad that you're able to join us tonight, sir.
Good evening, brothers. I'm so glad to be here.
All right, thank you. Well, you know, Pastor, I got to introduce the man up there in the other top of the picture there. You know, he's got this image of himself back there. You know, he is now a retired police chief, but he's known all over Oklahoma and Arkansas, all around the world as Chief Swaggy One. How you doing, brother?
What's going on, Verge? And, you know, I want to let the audience know we have a very distinguished man of Sigma on the podcast tonight. Other than myself, we have a very distinguished man of Sigma. And but before we get started, I would like to send condolences out to the Oklahoma City Police Department and the family of Sergeant Megan Burke, who was tragically killed this morning on her way home from an off-duty job. And I would also be remiss if I didn't extend prayers and condolences out to the family of Pastor Jackson and myself, one of our frat brothers, Tim Derrick's family. Tim passed by, and really Tim was known as Mr. Sigma in Oklahoma and other parts of me. So, you know, I want to extend condolences to both families.
Yeah. Well, you know, Keith, it's been a rough week once again in Oklahoma City law enforcement. You know, Edmond Police Department had another officer involved in a motorcycle accident, and he's last I know he was still in pretty critical condition. So, you know, this just come almost a month after they lost another motorcycle officer in a tragic crash. So definitely some challenging times in the Oklahoma City metro area for law enforcement and their families.
Hey, Virgil, and if I could, I'm sure our friends who are watching the podcast probably wanted to know what was the purpose of showing that opening video.
Yeah.
I think it's a segue into what Pastor Jackson will be talking about today.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that last week, a jury found a former Wolf City, Texas police officer not guilty of the murder of a young African-American man in the city of Wolf City. If anyone's not familiar with Wolf City, if you know where Greenville, Texas is, it's right next to where I went to college in Commerce, Texas. Wolf City is a little small bedroom community that's very close-knit, has a very large African-American population. This was a young man that was very well respected and well-liked. If you know the history of this incident, he was actually trying to break up a domestic that had occurred at that store. And officers were called, and instead of trying to get as much information as you can or try to wait for an assistance, because if you don't know that area, Hunt County Sheriff's Department and Texas Department of Public Safety assist in those areas when it comes to certain type of calls. And so it comes down to, because you use a taser on someone, it doesn't mean that you just automatically walk up on that person and try to engage with them. That's taser use 101. But the other thing is you try to find out more what's going on. Do I think that this officer should have been acquitted? Absolutely not. Do I think it was his plan to kill this young man? Absolutely not. But I think he was very reckless in his actions. If it's right, it's right. If it's wrong, it's wrong. I'm going to call it. I think that officer put himself in that position. And so at the end of the day, we have a young man who's dead. We have an officer who his life will never be the same. You have family members whose lives will never be the same. And you have a community that'll never be the same. But I will tell you, I really, truly believe that death was preventable. And I think the city of Wolf City, I think they did a really good job in immediately separating from this officer. But I think there's still a lot of questions to be answered. So I just wanted to get that out there, that I totally disagree, and I totally disagree with the makeup of the jury. It was not diverse at all, and I just really feel for this young man's family and the citizens of that city, and that's all I'm gonna say about that.
Okay.
Well, Keith, I think another thing that people, a little bit more context about this investigation, it was led by the Texas Rangers. Now, the Texas Rangers felt that this officer should have been charged. And that's how they got to where they ended up in court. So the Texas Rangers had all the evidence to show that this officer was responsible, liable for this man's death, which was unarmed. And so, I think, as the attorney representing the family said, the Texas Rangers got it right, but the jury didn't. And I think, oftentimes, people say, well, you can't question the jury because it's a jury of your peers. And you clearly in this incident, this was not a jury of his peers.
No.
And the attorney, Pastor Jackson, noted that this community is a pretty diverse community. So it's not like they could not find Black jurors or people of color to sit on this jury.
But it seldom is a jury of their peers. Very seldom.
Well,
Well, Virgil, you and the pastor have to know the history of Hunt County. I don't know, and I don't want to take any time away from my frat. But what I will tell you is, if you go back, and I would ask the listeners to do some research on Linnell Jeter, Greenville, Texas. I believe it was back in the 80s. He was a young man that worked for E-Systems as an engineer, and was accused of robbing a Kentucky Fried Chicken based on the fact someone said they saw him near the restaurant. And he spent, I think, a year in prison and finally got another trial and was acquitted. But Hunt County is known for that. That's nothing surprising in Hunt County when it comes to those type of legal system shenanigans. So that's all I'm gonna say about that. So this,
well, it sounds like he got a little bit more to say. Chief. I mean,
No, I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done.
well, and you know, and once again, you see when people say, "Hey, here's a jury of your peers," but it's really not, and then here's a police officer who gets off, and his life doesn't really change, but the life of the family changes. And I know, Keith, you said this former officer life is going to be changed. He won't be in law enforcement, but he still has his life. And I think, you know, at the end of the day, when you put on this badge and gun, you're responsible for your actions.
Yeah.
Just looking at at this guy, you can question. There's so many things that you can ask questions. What kind of training did he have? And Keith, you know all about that area. Most likely, very minimal training when it comes to de-escalation. Very minimal training when it comes to, you know, how to use less lethal force. Of course, he pulled out his taser, but there again, and I think, you know, we always say we got a lot of good police officers, but at the same time, when these guys go out and they do things that, when they kill an unarmed person, it's almost kind of like, well, yeah, but now the family is the one that's dealing with the aftermath, Pastor.
You know, I appreciate you gentlemen. You have always played it fair. You've always played it down the middle. And we know that we have individuals like you in law enforcement. So it's never an issue about painting everybody one particular color. But we understand that just as much as we have some bad apples in every profession, the whole jury system is just as bad as the bad cops. Because even when we get people to this point of prosecuting them for their behavior, and I think you're absolutely correct about the training, one thing that we have never been able to do with Oklahoma City Police Department is get to the training part where we have suggested that they spend time training in this area or that area, you know, to help de-escalate, to help in terms of mental health, preparation and things of that nature. They don't want anything to do with us helping them. Certainly they don't want to be told what to do. And it's not a thing about telling what to do. We're saying that this will help. This will prevent some of this animosity that we have right now. But when you stand behind a wall and you say that, you know, we don't want any parts of that. So it says to me that we don't plan to be any better. Now, here's the thing about it. I'm also a teacher, and I'm a trained teacher. And I teach a group of young men that are all in DHS custody. All of them on meds, and a lot of them have a whole bunch of issues. Well, all of them have issues. And I frequently have students that need to be restrained and stuff like that. It's a tough situation, and it ain't for everybody. I understand it. But no matter how angry I get, if I respond off the wall, if my training does not kick in, if I don't acknowledge what it is and what is lawful and what is not, then I'm going to be on the evening news. I'll be there. Now, what happens, you know, and I don't have a get out of jail free card. They're not going to find a jury that's going to say, well, you know, he's dealing with this kind of population. These students do this and they do that. I'm not going to get that benefit of the doubt the way that it happens sometimes. So now, cops have an unbelievably difficult job. I would never want to serve a warrant to somebody. I'd never want to stop by somebody's house. I don't care if it was in broad daylight, but certainly at 9, 10 o'clock at night, you know. But I have not been trained to do that. And somebody would probably say, well, Reverend Jackson, I wouldn't want to sit in your class with all these boys that keep breaking. I had one young man arrested last night because he broken in a weed shop for the 3rd time. And they go AWOL, and you can't do anything about it because DHS has limited everything. They can't be restrained when they leave. They can't be restrained when they walk out of the class, when they just decide to go to sleep and don't do anything. And so we are at a difficult point with them, but my training has to kick in. So if we're dealing with this at every other point in society, yeah, you're gonna have some folk that's gonna be belligerent when you encounter them. But when does your training kick in?
Yeah. Well,
that's always the thing.
Yeah. Well, you know, Pastor, you made you referenced, you know, a get out of jail free pass, or, you know, kind of like playing the Monopoly game. Here's a get out of jail free card. You know, and I think a lot of people probably feel the same way, that police officers have that pass. They can kill somebody.
I probably shouldn't have said it like that, but I'm
well, you know, this is what this podcast show is about. It's, you know, you and the law. What is the citizens' rights when they deal with police officers, and how should police officers, what are their rights, and what should and should they not do when they encounter, you know, citizens? And so,
Virgil, one of the things we gotta make sure that the listeners understand, it is about citizens' rights, but it's at the same time we also talk about the things that we do right as police officers. So it's not, you know, us being two law enforcement officers, executives, you know, we have to also share the information that's positive, and there's more positive than bad, but at the same time, we have to be honest with ourselves. And you know, we talk about a get out of jail free card, and I really do think sometimes police officers think it's a game out here. I think that they believe it's, you know, I think, and I learned this by some of the interviews that I participated in hiring police officers, and some of these applicants really believe it's like TV. They believe that it's chasing cars, chasing people, getting in the shootouts, and so they're already wound up. And then it comes down to, how are you training these individuals? You know, are you training them? Everything is a dangerous scenario. Are you relying on the psychological test? And so the thing about it is, I've always been taught, and when I trained at the academy, and when I teach, and when I taught recruits, it was, if you're going to pull that weapon out, no, there is a probability, not a possibility, but there is a probability you might have to use it.
Yeah.
And are you prepared to do that? And are you able to articulate why you did it? Not that I fear for my life, but actually give an articulation step by step. So, you know.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, we have a lot of folks fearing for their lives with folks that are not armed with anything. I remember a conversation I had with a young man fresh out of the academy, Oklahoma City Police Department, and he talked about how he chose to work in the Spring Lake Division because he wanted to be around some action.
Yeah.
What does that mean? I mean, you know, well, I know what it means, but I'm saying,
right.
I mean, you just looking for that, and you go and you take your roids and you take your steroids and you work out, and then you come back and you got to let that stuff go on somebody, because you can't control that kind of thing. And I think that's an issue. I think that's a major issue that they need to look at. And I don't know that anybody ever drug test police officers for steroids. I'm not talking about marijuana.
It's I will tell you, as a chief in the last two cities I was a chief, we've just started now going to the tests that do pick up steroids. It used to strictly be marijuana and other drugs, and it would miss steroids. So now there are tests that specifically test for all banned substances, including steroids.
I think that's extremely positive. And you know what, Chief? And
well, you know, Pastor, let me say this. I think a lot of people, the police unions have been very resistant to officers doing that. And Keith, you know, oftentimes things as administrators, what you want to do the right thing, but then you've got unions who want to come in the middle and say, oh no, we're not going to subject our office to that because, you know, that may have some kind of adverse impact on them. Well, there again, we are here to serve the public. And if that is something that, if you can get drug tested at any other place of employment, you should be able to get drug tested as a
Absolutely.
police officer. And the
Absolutely.
union shouldn't have anything to say about it.
No, they shouldn't. And that's why the union contracts are so important. And, you know, with Chief Bill City, the former police chief of Oklahoma City, we talked about that, and Chief City admitted to us there have been some officers he's fired, but the union has made him hire them back.
Yeah.
Right.
And these were some bad actors that he finally got out of the
Yeah.
department, because these guys were just determined to just do what they were doing, and they knew that they had that protection. So when I said to get out of jail free card, I'm not talking about from the standpoint of the administration of police departments, but from the standpoint of the union and juries that certainly don't represent a group of the victims' peers.
Yeah, you
So-
know, and I think the reason why what I've seen, Pastor, is the fact that a lot of times police officers and unions, they treat their members as if they're above the law. So it's as though, well, why are you testing us? We're police officers. We wouldn't use drugs. Or why are you giving us a lie detector or a polygraph test in an internal interview? We don't lie. You know, and so it comes down to thinking that we're above the law. In times we really think we are above the law, or unions or whomever think they're above the law. And so that's why you have these shocking statements and actions by police officers, because really and truly they believe, based on their representation, that they are above the law. We can get your job back. That's why you pay the union. You ought to sit in at the academy when unions go and actually talk to recruits. I have seen academies be literally just really good, eager to learn, very humble. And within a matter of days after an association or union has gone in to introduce themselves and talk about the purpose of the union or association, some of these recruits lose their mind. They believe that the union will always support them no matter what happens. So I've seen that. And
it appears to so many on our side to be perpetual employment, because
Mhm.
even if you got in trouble in this municipality, because your record doesn't follow you, you could just move over here and be picked right up.
Yeah.
And that's the folks that just need to be taken out of the rotation. And again, I'm going to deal with some training issues. I did a service last year for a young lady, Star. I used to go to my church. She was pregnant and was killed by a guy running from the police.
Yeah, I remember that.
We get a great deal of high-speed chase here.
Yeah.
With that model truck, it was a stolen truck, and he ran into her and killed her and her unborn child right there in front of Moon on 16th and MLK.
Yeah.
With the technology that we have now, you can shut down vehicles by satellite. Particularly when the owner, when the owner saw somebody get it, he can call his stuff in, it can be shut down. But I really think that so many people, and I'm going to say younger, they enjoy, emulating all the movies and the cop shows that we've seen, and they enjoy chasing somebody down. But every time there's a high-speed chase, there's a high probability that somebody's going to get injured. And this guy was high on whatever he was high on, but ran right in the Star. He had hurt an unborn child. And the segue into the service that I did Friday night for her uncle, that was the 13th victim in Oklahoma County Jail, John Basco. The 13th victim this year, that's after about 12 of them last year, and several others, and the disaster that the jail is down there, the infestation of bed bugs and lice, the mystery meat that passes for bologna, 19-year-old COs with little training and making little money and susceptible to running contraband. Training is a major deal. Everybody hates training. We get tired of professional development and everything like that, but it is absolutely necessary, particularly for folk in law enforcement.
Yeah.
And continuing education is a big deal. I mean, it's a life and death kind of proposition.
Mm-hmm.
And if we have to do this in the classroom for teachers, and we understand how important that is. Certainly, it's got to be important for law enforcement.
Yeah, well, it is, and there's a lot of emphasis that's put on training, Pastor Jackson, and to the listeners, but it's the type of training. It is, so you can put on training about leadership development, okay, but you can sit in the classroom for 4 hours or 6 hours. There's not a lot of feedback that you get from the officers about, what did you get out of this training? Yeah. And so it's almost kind of like, we've said this before. It's kind of like checking the box. Hey, we checked the box. We did this training. We moved on to the next training. But then when an officer goes out and violates the policy, you go back and say, well, we had some de-escalation training. Well, if you had de-escalation training, why did this officer have this many use of force complaints filed against him? So now you got to wonder, is it the training, or is it the officer, or is it the organization? Is it those three combinations that where you continue to see these things that through training should not happen? Because again, pilots, they go through a lot of training. Yeah. They got to go through a lot of FAA training, but you don't see them, when they land a plane, you don't see them sliding off the runway, or you don't see them taxiing, going to the wrong gate, because they have that repetitive training. Yes. But here, this is a profession where training, you can go out. Hey, we'll go out to the range and shoot. Now you can be on target to shoot and kill somebody, but that's a whole lot different when it comes to having some serious conversation about equity. Yeah. What does equity mean?
Well, and Chief, there are a great many small municipalities where all you need to do is apply. From my understanding,
all you need. Yeah, and you know what, Pastor, we talked about this on a previous podcast show. Oklahoma and Arkansas and several other states. Do you know you can walk into a police department and not even be certified, apply, that chief can say, okay, yeah, I hire you. You've got 6 months to a year before you go to an academy to become a certified police officer. But you have just been given a badge and a gun. You've been given all the tools. You've been given a car to drive. And you've been given the authority to enforce laws without even going to an academy. And just think, you may be there for 4 or 5 months, and let's say you do a bunch of stupid stuff. They say, oh, we're going to get rid of you. Well, you go on down the road to the next small police department. Yeah. You start all over again. Yeah. So there's some people that literally go almost 2 years before they even become a certified police officer because of how the system works. So, when policymakers, when legislators look at how do you change public safety, you need to make sure that people are not starting, especially in small and rural police departments. And I know a lot of people listening will say, well, you're having a hard enough time hiring people. Well, that shouldn't be an excuse to go ahead and say, well, you know what? Somebody said, John, he was a good old boy. So his daddy used to be a police officer in some other city. So I know he comes from good stock. So
that's why we hired him.
That's why we hire him. Yeah.
So let me tell you why. Let me tell you why you're talking about the topic is talking about has the community lost faith in law enforcement. Let me tell you how you can stop some of that. We have gotten to the point where it's the numbers game, and the numbers game is this is how many people we have our budget has set aside for us to hire. Mm-hmm. So our full strength is just say 1,000 officers.
Yeah,
man, we got to get to that full strength. We got to get to that full strength. We gotta get to that 5,000. We got to get to that.
Yes.
Got to get to that 1,000.
Yeah.
So if you have 900 officers, the focus for some chiefs is not to work effectively with those individuals that they have. Their focus is we got to fill these other 100 positions before we lose that funding. Well, what you've done is that you have hired, you are forcing your people or putting them in a position that they're going to hire first come, first serve. And when you hire first come, first serve, you're not going to get quality. I'm sorry.
That's right.
So sometimes as a police chief, you have to make a decision. We're just going to work short. Now, we might have to make some modifications, and we might have to pull some people out of specialized units. We might even have to eliminate some specialized units to put some more people on the street. We might have to look at our operations model to see if it works. But we got to stop. We've got to stop pushing this. We got to have these officers. We got to have these officers, because Pastor, you know this, Virgil, you know this, and I don't know if the listeners know this, but you can always work with your state police or your local county. If you feel that you don't have the smaller departments, it's okay not to have a police department if you're a is it Valley View?
Valley Brook.
Valley Brook.
Valley Brook. If you're Valley Brook,
Yeah.
it's okay not to have a police department.
Well, no. Well, I tell you what, Valley Brook is all about revenue. That is.
But what I'm saying,
Yeah.
but I'm saying, if you lead Valley Brook as a mayor, city council, whomever, it's okay to say we don't need a police department. Our main focus is the safety of our individuals. Let's contract with Oklahoma County Sheriff, or let's contract with state police, or something. But you can't just have these cities with police departments because they feel like they have to have one, and they're hiring people and retaining people that don't meet the standards of what people want and see in their police officers. And that's how you lose faith in your organization. It's because it's just like somebody saying, I got to have a car. Okay. Yeah. But just because you got to have a car, it doesn't mean you're going to buy a Bentley. Yeah. Okay. So you need a car. So at the end of the day, you need law enforcement, but there's so many different ways. And if you're going to have a law enforcement department, make sure it's an effective one, and one that the community can be proud of, and one that the community can have faith in.
But Chief, I honestly believe that the only reason that they and a couple other municipalities have one is just the revenue producer.
Absolutely.
And I've been victimized by them, as I have by some other municipalities over there, and my stuff certainly there. When I'm guilty, I'm guilty. But I know my stop in Valley Brook was the suspect. Because it was at night, I picked my kids up from a party and we were coming back, and this car got extremely close to me, and I'm trying to figure, it's pitch black. I'm trying to figure out why this car has gotten close to me. So I speed up a little bit. Well, I went over the speed limit. I didn't punch it. And I went from 35 to 37, and I got pulled over. And I never would have gone that had I known it was a cop back there.
Right.
Because I don't want to get tickets. And that I felt that was shady, and that was provoked in that way. And then when you go to pay it, and this is the attitude. You're paying with a check, and they ask for my home phone number to put on the check. Then they ask for my work phone number to put on the check. Then they ask for my social security number to put on the check. I'm like, what is all this, man? I mean, what is this going on? But it's the nature of that beast, unfortunately. And so this is why, and you are absolutely right. There's some places that, I don't know, they need to have their police departments decertified. And we need to just think of something completely different and approach policing from a different way, from a new way, a way that will keep people safe, and a way that will get back to protecting and serving. And change the attitude to what so many people have about policing now. Because I know you gentlemen personally. I know that y'all are good and honorable men. I know this, and I know y'all hire some good and honorable people. And so it's not a thing of painting everybody with a single brush.
Right.
Yeah.
But every department, I would imagine, of a good size, you bound to have, just the law of averages, you bound to have some bad actors in.
Yeah, definitely.
You bound to.
That's just the way. That's the way life is. You're gonna always have some people that's gonna cause you some problems in an organization.
That's right.
That's just facts. Hey, Pastor, let me ask you this: what does faith in the police look like? What does true faith in law enforcement from any community, but especially communities of color, what does that actually look like if it's going to work and be successful?
And I think it looks with addressing things honestly, and as I said before, not painting everything with the same brush and trying to deal with things. We know we have some stuff that's broken. We know we have some things that need to be adjusted, that need to be fixed. Some stuff needs to be scrapped. We need to add some things. I think the faith community should be involved with the police department, particular administration, in terms of trying to help whenever the administration would allow us to help craft something better, a better community policing thing, a better cooperation between the community and the department in this area or that area. And it's all individualized, according to the cities, the municipalities, and according to the needs there. But I think the more visible that officers are in the community at things other than stopping folks, for traffic violations and stuff like that, I think the better the relationship would be. The gentleman, I grew up in Jackson, Mississippi, and the gentleman that gave me my first speeding ticket, he gave my best friend his first speeding ticket too. But we saw him, his name is Willie Mack. We saw him all over the place. And when he saw us at 17, 18, at some place that he thought we shouldn't be, he cussed us out and make us go home. Yeah, everything does not warrant putting the cuffs on somebody.
Yeah.
And it's because he knew us and we knew him, and there was a relationship there, and he knew our parents. He just cussed us out and sent us home, and we went home.
And you're right, Pat. There's not a lot of relationship building in certain police departments. Some officers build, a rapport and a relationship with certain people in the community, but it's not the way we saw it when we were coming up, where they may put you in the backseat of a car and take you home and knock on the door and say, wait for your parents to answer the door. And now you're in a lot of trouble versus putting the handcuffs on you, taking you to jail, saying, "Oh, well, you were trespassing," or come up with some kind of excuse to arrest you at 14, 16, 17 years of age. So, hey, I want to remind our listeners that tonight's topic is have people lost faith in the police because officers lack judgment or intelligence. And Keith, some people, when you say judgment or intelligence, now people are going to say, well, what are you trying to say? So there again, tonight's topic is have people lost faith in the police because officers lack judgment or intelligence. And Pastor and our listeners, I've got a video that I want to show, and it involves a pastor in, I believe, in South Carolina.
Yes.
What you doing here, man?
Water flower.
All right, they saying is that your vehicle?
No.
It's not?
It's the neighbor's vehicle.
The neighbor's?
314, I'll be on 13.
Okay.
Yeah,
you live here?
No, I don't live here.
Okay. They saying that this vehicle is not supposed to be here and you're not supposed to be here.
Who's saying that?
They called about it. I don't know who called.
I'm supposed to be here. I'm Pastor Jennings. I live across the street.
You're Pastor Jennings?
Yes, I'm looking out for their house while they gone.
Okay.
Water in their flower.
Okay. Well, that's cool. Now, do you have like ID and all?
Oh, no, man. I'm not going to give you no ID.
Why not?
I ain't did nothing wrong.
Well, look, listen, I'm not saying do nothing wrong.
Doc, listen,
there's a suspicious person.
Look, I used to be a police officer in Goodwater. Don't come here with that. Okay?
Look, man, don't do this to me. There's a suspicious person in the yard, and if you're not one to identify yourself.
I don't have to identify myself. It's not a stop and identify state. That guy know me. He came to my store that got broke in. I live right over there across the street. Who called y'all?
That's what we got to figure out. But first,
who called?
You
live here?
He don't live here. I'm not saying nothing about.
You have no right to approach me if I ain't did nothing suspicious or nothing wrong. Told him I'm a pastor. I pastor until I don't hear. Sir. You want to lock me up? Lock me up.
Nobody wants to lock me up.
I'm not showing y'all anything. I'm going to continue to roll these flowers. I don't care who called y'all. Lock me up and see what happens. I want you to.
Hey man, just come here and talk to us. What?
Water these back flowers is what I'm finna do.
Look, man, let me see your phone. Let me see your phone, dude. Just calm down, okay?
No.
Stop.
I like this.
Okay. We're just trying to talk to you and see.
I don't want to argue with you, okay?
All right, go ahead and do what you got to do, Doc. Do what you got to do. Go on and lock me up.
Look, just have a seat.
It's already
not locked up.
You're just already a lawsuit,
yes,
Doc.
sir. Yes, sir.
It's already
Okay.
a lawsuit.
Just have a seat, okay?
Okay, already a lawsuit.
Do you know that gentleman back?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
Does he have
He lives right there.
Okay, does he have permission here to be watering flowers?
He may because they are friends.
Okay.
And they went out of town today, so
Right.
he may be watering their flowers.
Okay.
It'd be completely normal.
Okay,
And
is
that's
that
fine.
that's fine. If he would have said, "Hey, I got this," gave his identification because he's a suspicious person, he said that's not his vehicle; it's their vehicle.
We
Okay.
have a call. Like,
Yeah.
we're here
Okay.
because we're called here. I don't know who called, but somebody did.
Yeah, he lives right there, and he would be watering their flowers. This is probably my fault.
Okay, who is Roy Milam? That's you, ain't it?
I'm Michael Jennings, sir.
You're Michael Jennings. Who is Roy Milam? Okay, that's who that vehicle belongs to.
Yeah, that's
Who
all I
lives
know.
here?
His name is Roy.
That's who lives here.
That's Roy. I call him Roy and call his wife Connie, and I've been dealing with him for 7 years that I've been
Yeah.
living here.
They are friends.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you called not because of the car, but because you thought you saw someone besides him.
Right, I didn't know it was him.
Yeah,
I'm sorry
I got to
about
keep their
that.
flowers watered. I got to keep their flowers watered while they
so
gone.
sorry.
You okay?
Listen to me, man. Listen to
We
me.
are
Anytime the police come out and they
You don't
say,
bring it, fella.
we want to identify you, you have to identify yourself because there's a reasonable suspicion, there's a reasonable man, there's a
That has to
vehicle.
commit a crime.
There's a reasonable suspicion that you're here. It's not a crime.
Yeah.
If you would have said, yeah, here's my name, here's everything, we were like,
I
okay.
told him my name.
You didn't tell me your name.
I decided. He asked me who I was. I said,
You didn't give it to me when I first
Pastor
asked.
Jennings. Pastor Jennings.
That's not a name.
But
That's
still-
a pastor.
Yeah.
I need your
The way
name.
y'all handle this situation was totally wrong.
Well, listen,
You racial profile.
we're not
put that
racial
on him, but
profile.
yes, you did.
No, sir. No, sir. We're not about
I
that.
told
okay?
you I was here watering the flowers. But it's
How do I know that's the truth?
Because I
Anybody,
had the water hose in my hand. I was watering all the flowers.
anybody can pick a hose pipe up.
He is gonna be so pissed when I tell him I got arrested watering his flowers. 7
Well,
years
look,
we've been
look,
friends.
we got that. Look, let's sit back in here.
Okay.
You can sit down. Give me, so we can get this going on the ball. All right. What is your social?
I'm not gonna give him a social.
You need to give me your social.
I'll give you
Pastor.
my name. That's all I'm gonna give you. You're not gonna run no 27 and 28 on me and get me in the system for no reason.
All right. What's
Hey,
your
the girl already told you who I am.
Okay. Yes.
I'm Michael
yes.
Jennings. That's all you
Michael
gonna get.
Jennings.
Michael Jennings.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.
You know, there's a lot to say about that video, Pastor Jackson. A lot.
From the first time I saw it, I felt this pain, and it makes me upset just to hear the whole thing. Because what you hear from him is frustration.
Yeah.
I mean, this is frustration. This has been going on a long time. But we don't have to go all the way back to 1619. Let's just go back to Trayvon Martin and go back to Michael Brown.
Yeah.
And bring it forward with everything that's happened since that point. And we are seeing this, and we've seen the rise of people calling the police because the folks are sleeping while black and walking while black. But why are you in this neighborhood? The man was watering flowers.
Yeah.
He was not looking through a window. He was watering flowers.
On a Sunday afternoon, after he just got through preaching a sermon.
And that frustration that you heard was, why is this anybody's business if I'm just watering some damn flowers?
Exactly. Yeah. And you know, the white lady that was in the video, she's the one who called the police. You know, first she said, or they said they didn't know who called the police. And then, you know, she finally came around and at the part of the video, you heard her say, this is probably my fault. Okay, so they believe what this white lady said because they said, well, yeah, he's probably right. He does water their flowers, and so he probably has a right to be there. But when you got a black man telling you the exact same thing, but now you want to say, well, when we the police, again, when we the police ask you who you are, you better tell us who you are. I don't, he said, well, my name is Pastor Jennings. That's not a name. That really got me when he said that's not a name.
Yeah.
I'm a pastor. But now in the eyes of these white cops, you're not a person. When you say I'm a pastor, okay, well, Pastor Jennings, okay, what church do you pastor at? You start some kind of conversation other than, hey, you look suspicious. The whole thing about suspicious, Pastor Jackson, how do you look suspicious when you're watering some plants on a Sunday afternoon?
Well,
you just didn't walk up in this yard and say, hey, I'm just going to water these people plants.
Unfortunately, our melanin is probable cause.
Yeah.
Too often. That's what it is. And I know as I'm saying, as I said earlier, I know police officers have a difficult time, and everybody that they stop is not going to be in that right frame of mind. But understand, there are a lot of folks that are so frustrated with all of law enforcement now. It doesn't matter whether they have my wife retired from DOC for 31 years, and they lump her in the same boat as COs and as police officers.
Yeah.
And so folks are just pissed off at law enforcement, a lot of folks. But, I get stopped a lot, I guess you can say. I did get stopped for speeding here in Spencer, Chief, and I know you'll find this interesting. And,
okay.
and the gentleman came, and I gave him everything. My hands are 10 and 2. I know the deal. It's what I taught my kids. It's what I teach everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "You look angry. Why are you mad?" Now, nobody in their right mind wants to be stopped and get a ticket.
Yeah.
Why are you trying to psychoanalyze me on the road, man? Yeah. I was speeding. Write me a ticket and let me go.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to have this kind of conversation with you about why I'm angry.
Yeah.
I'm angry because I got stopped and I'm getting the ticket written. That's why I'm angry.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, I mean, if I'm cooperating everywhere else, I mean, what should change that stop? Yeah. I'm not raising my voice. I'm giving you everything you asked for. And it's just the absolute obedience that some folks demand.
Yeah. Well,
and that takes us to another place in American history.
Yeah. And I think that's why it was important to have this topic tonight, Pastor Jackson. Have people lost faith in the police because officers lack judgment or intelligence? And I'm saying I think both people have lost faith in police officers' judgment and the intelligence, because if you got an officer who wants to ask you a question, why you look angry, what kind of intelligent person are you to ask another grown man, do you look angry? Yeah. I mean, and again, the agency, when you talk about Spencer, when I was a police chief there was a lot of things wrong with it. And the one main thing that I tried to do as a police chief there was change the culture of how police officers interact with the citizens. That is it. We're not out here to write tickets. If you catch somebody speeding, there's nothing wrong with say, hey, slow down. But we need to get back into what we are here, the purpose of what we are for, and that is to serve the community. It's a service. It's not all about, hey, I didn't get a ticket today. Now I'm gonna write Pastor Jesse Jackson a ticket, and so then when you go to court, you got the judge who's known for, hey, if you don't have your money, you got 20 minutes to call your family. And if your family can't get down here in 20 minutes, you see that officer standing over there, he's going to take you down to the Oklahoma County Jail.
Yeah.
Now, no, we're not going to do that. And so, let me get to a question, one of the comments that Sarah Banner made. And it's a good comment, Sarah. And she made the comment about, as you said, if you know the community you police, the local pastor. Now, that city that they were in is not a big city. So I don't care if you're a white police officer, black police officer, you should know every pastor in your community. And if you don't, that just goes back to what kind of police officer are you, and what kind of police chief do you have? And to give a little some more about this story, the police chief, when they first interviewed him, he kind of said, well, he really didn't know a whole lot about it. He kind of made some excuses about it. And, well, let me look into it. Well, as you heard the pastor say, you know, he filed, since then, he filed a lawsuit against the city and the police department. And so, again, you know, Sarah says it's power and control. That's pretty much, at the end of the day, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
Power and control.
That's exactly right.
And if you question who I am, or you question my judgment, or you question my intelligence, I'm gonna let you know who's got the power and who's got the control.
And everything is about relationship, gentlemen. Everything is about relationship, and I think that the police department, knowing what the mindsets of so many people are in the communities now, they might need to take the lead. I don't think it's the citizens' job to foster better relationships with the police department as much as it is the police department ought to make that a priority.
It definitely, they should. Hey, Pat, we got another comment from somebody I went through the academy with. He's a police officer in Midwest City, Tom Lance, and he said terrible police work on that video. You know, Pastor, here's a police officer who I believe he was born and raised in Midwest City. He spends a lot of time in the community dealing with youth, whether it be, you know, basketball or whatever way he can reach especially the minority kids in Midwest City. This officer has done a tremendous job of doing that. And I wish there were more police officers like him. And you know, and I've got to say this, you know, some people may get offended, but we don't see enough of us who look like us out here doing the things that other people who don't look like us are out in our communities doing. And so if we want to start building better relationships with our young men and women, we need to have more Black police officers out in these communities doing the same thing as what Lance does in Midwest City. And that's the truth.
We need more examples of you guys and like Brother Lance here doing it. You know, right now you all appear to be the exceptions. We know it's more than you now, but we don't know them.
Yeah. And I think that's where it takes people. You got to get outside of your comfort zone. And this isn't just about, hey, I got to work a 12-hour shift. And I'm out here, you know, I got to deal with these bad people and all that. You got to get outside of your car. You got to talk to people. You know, I tell, go ahead, Keith.
You know, and Pastor, and to the listeners, we have to realize that this is a profession. I heard so many people say this is a calling. I do agree. But I think people also forget that this is a profession. We as law enforcement have treated this as a job and as a just something to do for years and years and years. This is a profession. And what happens in a profession if you don't act professional? So, for instance, if you, as an electrician, if you don't act within the guidelines of being an electrician and things like that, you have a possibility of losing your license. Same thing with other professions. And so we have a problem with understanding that we are a profession, and sometimes what it means and what we need to do to maintain that professionalism in law enforcement. That's part of the problem, y'all. When you don't realize and take pride in what you do, and you come to work every day or go to work every day just to do something, just because you have to pay your bills, and you don't love it, then why would you care what people think? Why would you care about making people? That's just facts.
Yeah. You're right.
Well, and you know, again, and I think that's why it's important to have this conversation about, you know, things that some people probably say, you know, it's a touchy subject, But when you talk about how people lost faith in police because officers lack judgment or intelligence, that's a real question that police need to answer. And if you are not doing the right thing, what do you need to do right, Pastor? So you don't see another Pastor Jennings being arrested for watering his neighbor's flowers. And one thing that we didn't see in that video is that at the end, when you watch the whole video, Pastor Jackson, they are trying to determine what citation to write him, because there's not a citation code for that. And the senior officer, I believe he could have been a sergeant, said, well, just write him the lowest citation and we'll figure it out later. Yeah. So here you are you're deciding a man's fate on the side of the street. And instead of, now one of the guys said, well, we can't unarrest you. Once we put you in handcuffs, we got to take you to jail. And I'm going to sit there and I'm going to say, I've been a police chief in Oklahoma, Arkansas, now up in Minnesota. If I want you out of them handcuffs, I'm going to take them handcuffs out of you and I'm going to let you go. There is nobody that can tell me that I cannot do that. If I want to unarrest you, I can. Now, you're going to have some officers say, well, no, chief, you can't do that. Well, guess what? I've got the authority as a police chief to do it, because sometimes you got to do the right thing instead of doing, well, hey, I arrested this person. That's a bunch of crap.
But, Chief, I think we also have to realize that, and you're absolutely right, but it goes deeper than our initial point of contact there. People have lost faith in the system. Yeah, they have. The gentleman that had his knee on the neck of Eric Floyd, am I correct? And did he have a long list of disciplinary actions?
He had a very long list of disciplinary actions that the Minneapolis Police Department knew about. But once again, it goes back to the union. Now, the former police chief probably tried to do everything he could, but you got the union stepping in and said, well, hey, suspend him for a couple of days, send him to some type of remedial training. Okay, you put it in his file. That guy should have been gone years, and we wouldn't have seen the death of George Floyd.
He should have been gone, but that record ought to be public before they kill somebody. Yeah, and it ought to be public before they go to another municipality and get a job, which they frequently do.
Well, and there are, some states have where you can decertify officers. And I think a lot of police officers say, man, that's pretty harsh when you decertify somebody. If you have done something that negligence, you don't need to be in this profession. And I say that about any other profession. If you're a doctor and you get a malpractice lawsuit against you, you're not going to go practice medicine anywhere else in another state.
Chief, I'm a teacher and I lose my teaching license if I teach a book that's now on the ban list. Yeah. I not only lose my job with Oklahoma City Public Schools, but I lose my license to teach in Oklahoma.
Yeah. Well, and guess what? Yeah, and guess what? Now, if you teach about critical race theory, you sure will lose your job because of a governor that just have absolutely made it his priority to say, you're not going to teach this in our schools. And if you do teach it, you're not going to be a teacher anymore. So, hey, Pastor, we're coming up on the last few minutes of the podcast show. I want to thank you again for taking the time to come out and talk to us and our listeners.
My pleasure.
We got to get you back on because we're going to talk about a very important topic that's real important in Oklahoma City, and that is the crisis at the Oklahoma County Jail.
Yes, sir.
So, Pastor, we definitely thank you for taking the time to come on and join us. But we'll be getting together real soon to have you back on the podcast show.
Thank you all so much. And there is a connection between all we're talking about today and all that we need to talk about.
All right. Thank you. Everybody have a good night.
Thank you so much.